Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome one and all to episode number 29 of The Adventure Continues, a Star Trek discussion, a bi-weekly Star Trek discussion where we take a look at a specific episode of the original series or the animated series. It could be The Next Generation, it could be Deep Space Nine, it could be Voyager, or it could be Enterprise or one of the 10 original movies. And we sit back and relax and discuss this episode with all of you in the chat. Sometimes we have a guest, sometimes we don't have a guest, but we do talk about the episode, talk about any information referring to the episode, as far as behind the scenes information, what it took to get the episode made, and why the episode was made. Of course, with tonight's episode of Deep Space Nine, this is the sixth episode of Deep Space Nine's first season, and the episode is Cueless, and it brings back a fan favorite character who is sometimes a villain, sometimes he plays it down the middle, but it brings back Q for his one and only appearance during the 7 season run of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And of course, prior to this appearance on Deep Space Nine, he was last seen in the fourth season episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, Cupid. And that's an episode where Q decides to play a game and take the Enterprise crew along with Vosh, who you do see in this episode, to Sherwood Forest. And that's also an episode where there's a famous quote from everybody's favorite Klingon. And that famous quote from Mr. Worf is, "Captain, I must profess, I am not a merry man." And of course, shenanigans happen in that episode. We'll get to that episode sometime in the future, but tonight we're going to be talking primarily about Q-less. And it's not a bad episode. I even rewatched it not that long ago prior to the stream, and I invite all of you to join me over on Cosme if you're interested. If you're not interested, that's fine too. But you're more than welcome to click onto that Cosme link that's pinned into the chat on all platforms, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Rumble, whether it be Blaze. You're all welcome to join in and, yep, sit back, relax, and discuss your memories of this episode. And of course, if this is your first time here on the channel, or if it's your first time seeing this episode, well, then come on into the Cosme side. The water's fine, and I'm going to go ahead and start playing the episode. So as you can see, it begins here on the promenade. Everybody's whining and dining, and Dr. Bashir is trying to be a playboy, trying to flirt with a Bajoran. Meanwhile, you see Chief O'Brien sitting behind him, and he's got that look on his face like, "Oh, come on, Jillian. This is what you're trying to do to swoon the woman onto your side?" And this is the first time Jillian's gonna bring up the fact that he was a salutatorian instead of valedictorian because he missed a question on his final exam. And look at the look on Chief O'Brien's face. He's like, "Oh, please." So we're finding out that the runabout came back from the Gamma Quadrant via the wormhole, and it's completely out of power. Yet you have Dax and another science officer inside the runabout. And now Dr. Bashir mentioned that his tricorder is picking up three life forms, not two. And Chief O'Brien is using an emergency power unit to provide some power to the servos for the door. And now you see Commander Cisco and Major Kira opening the door. And this is where Chief O'Brien sees a familiar face. It's Vash. And of course, you know, in any other case, some might say, this is an episode to try to get people to watch the show because its ratings were failing. That wasn't the case for Deep Space Nine. With this only being the sixth episode of the series here in the first season, it was a way of getting fans to actually tune into the show. And there you see John Delancey, also known as Q. He's made his mark on several episodes of The Next Generation, several episodes of Voyager, but like I said previously, only one episode of Deep Space Nine. And I quite frankly don't think Q would have worked all that well in any future episodes of Deep Space Nine. Especially where Deep Space Nine ends up going in the later season. Lady Mist, good evening. How are you doing today? Today, tonight, or depending on where you live, it could already be morning for you. But Lady Mist, I know you. I know you live on the West Coast, so I'm just saying in general. So, Lady Mist, since you're over in the Cosme side and you're watching this episode along with me, and hopefully other people do pop in and out as the time goes by. What do you remember about this episode? And of course, Dr. Bashir is doing a checkup on us, especially since she's been in the Gamma Quadrant for 2 years. And Lady Miss says she doesn't remember much from this episode. Yep, and that's understandable, especially if it's been a long while since you've watched it. I know you do. I know you do. Yeah, Lady Miss is saying she's seen the episode before, but it was when it first aired. So now Dax and Cisco are trying to find out how Bosch ended up in the Gamma Quadrant 2 years before the Federation took over Deep Space Nine. So we learn about Deep Space Nine's SA office and its security systems to keep people's valuables safe. And we find out what trinkets Vosh has brought back with her from the Gamma Quadrant. And now the piece of resistance. Isn't she the same lady that was on the planet with Picard looking for some special artifact? Yes, this is who we first met in the season 3 episode of Next Generation called Captain's Holiday. And of course, it had a Ferengi played by Max Grodnick, who would later play the character of Rom here on Deep Space Nine. And Cisco, ever the gentleman, is holding Bosch's bag for her. Oh, we'll find out how she got there. I think we already know. And there's Quark. He's always intrigued by new people who step foot on the station, possible business opportunities that might lie ahead. And Bosch, ever the entrepreneur, is in search of profit, especially with the artifacts that she brought back. So we're getting our first clue with that line of dialogue from Chief O'Brien. What's going on? Our first little breadcrumb. Problems are starting. Yeah, Cardassian mattresses, from what any characters ever explained about them, they're quite firm. And there he is, Q. Now just listen to the dialogue between and Q, especially every time they're on screen together. And Q's playing games. Vosh isn't putting up with any of Q's crap. He's immortal. He's omnipotent. Hey, Steven, thanks for popping over. I'm talking. I'm also listening to the dialogue in the episode. Q's got a reputation being a liar, a deceiver, a mischief maker. How's your stream going, Steve? And of course, Quark's brought some wine. Why not? Now they're bargaining. And Vosh is going to get Quark at one of his androgynous zones. The ears, giving him umox. If it wasn't for Quark, there's no way you could have redeemed the Ferengi. Of course, you got to give a lot of credit to Armin Shimmerman. Nope. And I want to take the time to say to Deborah Vilbert and also to, let's see, Varda Elentari. Thank you for following the Rumble channel. Really appreciate that. If you like to watch this episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the Cosme link is pinned to the chat. A little challenge from Q Devash. And there we go. Q's playing more games, this time with Dr. Bashir. Are the males on the station going crazy? Not in this episode. There is an episode in the future where the men do act a little crazy, but there's a reason for it. And there's a reference to the last episode that Q and Vosh were in from Next Generation, Cupid. And also, Lady Miss, if you remember about the Ferengi don't view women very highly as far as being out in the workforce or being outside of the home, especially Ferengi female. And Quark's not berating Vosh because Vosh is speaking his language, negotiation and profit. And Q with that patronizing attitude, that condescending attitude towards Cisco. Q's not going to get sympathy from Cisco. One of my favorite scenes coming up here, and it includes one of the favorite lines from the Cisco's like, really, Q? You want to mess with me? And that was the famous line. You hit me. Picard never hit me. I'm not Picard. And more people are coming aboard the station, and Odo doesn't like it. And one of the interesting things is, yes, this is Q's only appearance on Deep Space Nine, but it was after this episode they decided that Q and Borg were restricted to Voyager. They weren't going to be appearing on Deep Space Nine, other than what you saw in the premiere episode Emissary, and what you're seeing with Q here in Q list. And this episode has received mixed reaction from the fans. Some like it, some don't. And of course, it's always a game to see who's ahead of the other when it comes to Odo and Quark. Lady says about Cisco hitting Q. That felt good. Hit him some more. I mean, I'm surprised of all the next generation characters that did try to take a shot at Q with a round punch. Worf would have been the likely candidate. And now Quark's trying to bribe Odo in order to keep Odo's prying eyes off of this auction that Quark is arranging. Now, pay attention to this interaction between Q and Vosh. It's going to give you some information. I'll be quiet. Yes, all from a simple bug bite in the Gamma Quadrant on Erebus Prime. Vosh could have died. She wasn't there. So as far as Q is concerned, Vosh is indebted to him. And now here's what Star Trek always does well. At least it did during the Gene Roddenberry Rick Berman era. It's coming up with a plan to solve the problem. And they're giving us a time frame as far as how long it might take before they pass the point of no return. And yes, the condescending attitude of Q, because while Chief O'Brien was on the Enterprise, he was the transporter chief. Yes, in Encounter at Farpoint, he was just referred to as a con officer. He was on the bridge. He went to the battle bridge. But for the rest of his time on Next Generation, he was the transporter chief, usually in Transporter Room 3. And there's Q saying that Bosch is the real threat. And some of those who are there for the auction want to know that they're getting legitimate items from the Gamma Quadrant. You can't blame them. Are we sure about that, Vosh? Do you really want that wife? Problems keep happening. They're trying to come up with a contingency plan, and it's not helping that they're in a graviton pulse that's pulling them toward the wormhole. Well, you heard Quark, ladies and gentlemen. All sales are final. Quark knows his clientele. They're not interested in historical facts. They want to know what it is, what it's supposed to be for the Gamma Quadrant, and how much they have to bid for it. They need something stronger to help them detect what the problem is with the Cardassian sensors. They're not like Federation sensors that can detect internal problems with a snap of a finger. And this is one of the episodes where we do see some interesting looking aliens. See, Quark's trying to reassure everybody that there's no problem, and Q just spoiled all of everybody's fun, everybody's mood for the auction because of their impending doom. It was an inside job if Quark's selling it to a cousin. Yes, it certainly was, and we're gonna find out something here. And just to let everybody know, Jennifer Hetrick, who plays Fox in this episode, her last credited role is as of 2018, and it was an episode of the show Code Black. She's been in other shows such as NCIS. She's been in Prison Break. She's been in 24. She's also been in Alias, Criminal Minds. She's also been in two episodes of Sliders, Party of Five, Beverly Hills 90210, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Silk Stockings, X Files, Diagnosis Murder, Jake and the Fat Man, General Hospital, amongst many other TV shows. So we found out what the whole problem was with the power drain, not on the runabout, also on the station. It's that orb inside that box. But wait, there's more. And lo and behold, it's a light. So the whole reason why there was a power drain is because inside that box was a life orb. And it was probably draining the power in the runabout and on the station as nutrients. Quark is trying to tempt Vosh. Get her at her weakness, not only with archaeological digs, but also profit. And now Q's trying to tempt Savash about going to the Taurus 5. Oh, yeah. Q's so full of it here. Sure, you are, Q. Oh, come on, Vash. Don't you want to from Q? Yeah, Julian, you missed an adventure. So that was Q list from Deep Space Nine. It's not a particularly bad episode. It's not a particularly good episode. It's right there in the middle, in my opinion. And the reason why it's right there in the middle is because it was a way of bringing Q to the newest Star Trek show. It was a way to get fans who have watched the Next Generation, know Q from the Next Generation, to come over and watch Deep Space Nine. Again, with it being the newest Star Trek show at the time, you're trying to get eyes, you're trying to get an audience, and one way you're going to do it is you're going to bring in a familiar character. And it's part of what I had said in the very beginning for the adventure continues when I started doing this over a year ago. We're gonna cover the good episodes. We're gonna cover the bad episodes. This one's more in the middle. I wouldn't consider it bad. I wouldn't consider it good, like I just said. However, even these episodes will be discussed. And yes, was it nice to see Q in this episode? Yes, it was. But I do strongly believe that they could have done it a different way. You know, have it be more impactful, especially with it being Q. Make the stakes a little higher instead of, you know, this orb in the box that's causing the power drain. You find out later on it's actually a life form that looks like a manta ray, but make it more impactful. It could have been a case where maybe during the kerfuffle between the Klingons and the Federation, that maybe Q shows up at one time, or even during the Dominion War, you have Q come in for a good reason. But see, that's the thing. If I'm going to bring in a character like Q, I want him there for a good reason. I don't want him there just for the sake of having him there. And in a lot of respects, I I feel like, and I view it like this too, like he was brought into this episode just for the sake of bringing him into this episode, and that sake being, as I said earlier, to get eyes on the show. And Lady Miss says, I always found Q annoying. Well, you're not the only one. I like John Delancey. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a wonderful actor, and you need a wonderful actor like John Delancey to play a character like Q so that Q can be annoying, can be that nuisance, can be that itch that you want to scratch, and every time you scratch it, it just doesn't seem to go away because he's always pestering you. And Lady Miss says it would have been cool if it was more about the life form. Absolutely, absolutely. That what they could have done is instead of involving Avash and Q, is they could have had it where Dax returns from the Gamma Quadrant in the Ganges with the fellow science officer, and she gets off the Ganges, and when she gets off the Ganges, she greets Ben and says, "Benjamin, we found this orb here that has a tremendous, insert techno babble here, something about the electrical magnetic wave, or something to the effect saying that you know its energy readings are off the scale, and we even had trouble getting back to the station because we were experiencing a power drain. And then as they go on and they study it, they then learn it's a life form. I mean, I think that would have been again. I don't love this episode. I don't hate this episode. This episode's in the middle for me. But still, just like with Move Along Home, I do think it could have been executed better. You don't necessarily need Q in this episode. You don't necessarily need Vosh in this episode. It could have been a thing where that life form within that box comes through the wormhole, comes to the station. And by tracing its trajectory from the wormhole, they deduce that it came from the Gamma Quadrant, obviously, and they start to study it. And by they, I mean Cisco, Dax, Kira, and even Geo O'Brien, especially with the energy fluctuations that were affecting the power supply on DS9. And as far as having Q in again, I understand why Rick Berman and Michael Pillar and company brought Q in. He's a known character. He was a popular character at that time. So you want to bring in somebody that'll get eyes on your show, considering it's so early in that show's run. Only 6 episodes in. You really haven't established all that much by the 6th episode of Deep Space Nine. You've already established how it's a Cardassian space station. It was in orbit of Bajor during the occupation. They discovered the wormhole, and now it's at the mouth of the wormhole, and it's a place where ships come and people do gambling quarks, a place of commerce, communication, but you know, you really haven't established who these characters are other than Dr. Bashir being the hopeless romantic, especially when it comes to Jedzia. Jedzia being a trill with the symbiote inside her, and the symbiote being 300 years old. And then, of course, you have Major Kira, who fought in the resistance against the Cardassians. Of course, Chief O'Brien, we know him from Star Trek The Next Generation. He served on the Rutledge, and he served on that ship during the Federation Cardassian War, so he's not very fond of Cardassians, as we learned in Next Generation. And of course, you have Odo. He's the shapeshifter, the changeling. They're still trying to figure him out too. So, again, if you're going to try to establish a new series, yes, you are more than likely going to bring in characters that somebody knows if you already have a pre-established show where you've already had a foothold with that character. But in this case, I do strongly, strongly believe that Q could have served a better purpose in a better episode. But that's just my opinion. Somebody else could look at it differently, and that's fine. It's just like with my Masters of the Universe review. Yes, I gave spoilers for that review, but that is my opinion. Again, everybody has their own opinion. You're entitled to your own opinion. But when it comes to this episode, it's mid. It's not terrible. It's, not the greatest episode. It's mid. But Lady Miss, do you have anything that you want to add about this episode? As I look to see if there's anyone over on Blaze or Cosme who has chimed in. And no. And I don't see that anybody's chimed in over on Rumble either, so again, I understand what they were going for in this episode. It's just it didn't stick the landing. And that was my problem with Move Along Home. Move Along Home was an alright episode up until the ending where you find out it was just all a game and Cisco, Dax, Bashir, and Kira were never in danger in that episode. Now, I will say, and Lady Miss says, yeah, it was. Yeah. So, again, there's going to be episodes of all the Star Trek series that you'll absolutely love, absolutely hate to watch, and some you just go, it was okay. But, I really don't have much more to really say about this particular episode other than what I've already said at the start. And, you bring in two characters who are established on Next Generation and you try to get them to work in your story for Deep Space Nine. And they didn't necessarily fall flat, they just didn't stick the landing all that well. It was a little wobbly when they landed. But I do want to let everybody know that for the next episode of The Adventure Continues, a Star Trek discussion in a couple of weeks from tonight. As of right now, it's going to be the original series episode Space Seed with Ricardo Montalban as Khan, the very episode that inspired Nicholas Meyer and Harv Bennett to come up with the idea for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And as long as nothing changes, I'll be joined by Stone Loki. Now, if something does change, I will let you know right away, and I will have an episode in place of that. But as of right now, unless things change, the episode is going to be Space Seed, the 22nd episode from the first season of the original series with Ricardo Montalban as Khan Noonien Singh. And Lady Miss says it was a filler show to have an episode for the week. Aaron, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And even with a new show like Deep Space Nine and other new shows during that particular point in times in 1993, you had filler episodes early on because the writers were trying to come up with ideas, and sometimes they don't always have the best ideas. Sometimes what looks good on paper, it looks good when they film it. When you see it all put together, it doesn't stick with the audience. The audience will look at it and go, I don't know. You guys needed to work on that a little bit more in the writer's room, but it went through. It's part of the episode total for Deep Space Nine, and it's still one that I would say give it a watch if you like Q, and it's also one I can confidently say you can skip it if you don't want to watch it. Again, I know it sounds like I hate the episode. I don't hate the episode. It's just one of those things where it's just in the middle for me. It's not great, it's not spectacular, it's not horrible, it's not trash. It's just in the middle. But again, 2 weeks from tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time, we'll be watching and discussing Space Seed with Stone Cold Loki. Again, like I said, if anything changes, I will let you all know. Now, as far as what's coming up for the rest of the week here on Pacific Forum 4, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and it would be 1 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And if you don't live in any of those time zones, or if you live in the Mountain Time Zone, then it would be 2 p.m. Mountain Time, and everywhere else around the world. Well, I'm not going to figure it all out for you, but tomorrow on Pacific 4 and 4 Pop Talk at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we will be watching the finale of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, with it being the extended edition of The Return of the King. So that is why that particular episode of Pop Talk is starting at 4 p.m. as opposed to 5 p.m. like we did last week for the Two Towers, or even our normal starting time of 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So that's coming up for tomorrow. Then Tuesday on Blaze, YouTube, and Rumble. And of course, tomorrow's watch party will also be on Blaze, YouTube, and Rumble. And I'll make sure to have the Cosme link pinned in all three chats for anyone who wants to watch. And hopefully, we don't have what happened last week with the Blaze side, where StreamYard lost connection. And I tried to fix it, and it would never come back up. But Tuesday, I'll be playing more Metal Eden at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Then Wednesday, for the Wednesday edition of Pacific 4 and 4 Pop Talk at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, because that's time zone our guest is currently in. We'll be joined by the pop culture mechanic, and this will be his return to Pacific 4 and 4 Pop Talk as our guest, and we'll be catching up with him. And that'll be Cash, Baron, myself, catching up with Pop Culture Mechanic. Yes, he was on the 500th episode show of Pop Talk, but this will be just him as our guest, and Baron, Cash, and I catching up, seeing how he's doing, and also trying to get his channel up to 1,000 subscribers. He's getting close. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and get his channel link, because he really deserves it. He does a lot of good content. He's not just about anime. He also works in the trades, and he does his trade talk every Tuesday. And I think it's important that we all learn something about the trades, considering if it wasn't for people in the trades, well, we wouldn't have plumbing, we wouldn't have electricians, so many things that we wouldn't have. Working on your car, you need someone who knows that skill trade. Building homes, you need somebody who knows that skill trade. But he will be our guest on Wednesday's show, so there's his YouTube channel link. Go ahead and subscribe if you'd like. And I'm putting it in Rumble and Blaze. And speaking of Rumble, I know he has a Rumble channel. So let me just go ahead and get his Rumble channel link as well. So please give him a follow. But he's very close to 1,000 subscribers over on his YouTube channel. As a matter of fact, as I look at it here, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. Just give me a second to do that. So, as I share my screen here, as you can see, he's at 964 subscribers. So he's getting close. He's getting close. And he just needs 36 subscribers to be at 1,000 subscribers. And I strongly believe he does. He really does. But let me also get his Rumble link. That way, anybody who is on Rumble or also has a Rumble account can give him a follow over there. I don't know if he has a Blaze channel. I can check that real quick. But here is his Rumble link. I first posted it over on the YouTube side, then I'll post it on the Rumble and Blaze side. And while I'm over on Blaze, I'll go ahead and see if Pop Culture Mechanic is over there. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he isn't. I know he's over on Kick. But he's a good friend of the channel. The first stream he and I actually did together was a Transformers related stream where we talked about Generation 1 Transformers. That was the first stream that he had even really done with people, and he had told me afterwards that it inspired him to start up his own live streams. And so I'm not going to take credit for that, but it's just amazing to see how far he's come just to get so close to 1,000 subscribers. So we can help him get to 1,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. I think that would be awesome. And currently he has 112 followers over on his Kick channel. So let me get his Kick channel link in there too for anyone who might be on Kick. And you can give him a follow over there. So YouTube has it, Blaze has it. In just a little bit, they will. But Rumble now has it. And there's Pop Culture Mechanics link over on Blaze. So go ahead and give him a sub and a follow, and I know he would welcome you over there, especially when he's playing a game and talking about the history of the game and why he's playing it, or anime. And when it comes to anime, he has different themes each month and even each week for the different animes he's discussing, and his Trade Talk Tuesdays. Find out what he does at his workplace, and what needs to be done to keep the machines working and keep them as clean as possible. And where he talks about what would happen if they don't maintain the machines as well as they do. So again, go over, give him a sub and then follow. And until next time, everybody, thank you to Lady Mist, of course, for popping in tonight. I greatly appreciate it, Lady Mist, as always. You're always here. You're always constant, and you're always very supportive. So I do appreciate that. I know there are a lot of other people who are supportive, but I'm letting you know because you're always here. You're always watching, and you're always, encouraging, and you're not afraid to get your opinion out there in the chat, and that's welcomed. Of course, Steven, thank you for popping in as well, brother. Really appreciate it. I hope yours is going well. And I also want to say thanks to Varda Alentari for following the Rumble channel. Thank you very much. And I also want to say thank you again to Deborah for following the Rumble channel as well. Thank you. And let's see. Did anyone else pop in? No. And of course, Lady Misses, take care. And have a nice rest of your day. Well, you too, Lady Miss. Thank you for spending, over an hour here and just listening to me talk about the episode and hearing me ramble as well. So thank you very much. And until next time, everybody, live long and prosper.